Chaser? I hardly knew her.
No, I said Chasen. No.
Oh, God.
Sorry. I do not want to invoke that on this special.
Do not invoke that. So, why don't you explain to the audience, which is now smaller, what is in front of you?
What is in front of me?
Yes. What's on the table in front of you? This isn't a trick, by the way.
In front of us?
In front of, well...
He gave me a dirty look because it's in the middle of the afternoon and I made Moscow mules, and he was wondering why I was doing that.
Because he's a Russian agent.
We needed a chaser for the shot of sherry that we're going to do at the end of this podcast.
Yes. So, I don't even know how to say this, but well, here's why I feel like shit. I think that's a good way to start. I mean, what the fuck else am I supposed to do?
You were born.
Yeah. It was 1923, and the Great Depression had just started. No, I'm really... I'm a combination of sad and pissed because a few weeks ago, so, February, and now it's... What is it? Is it April or May? It's April. I don't know what fucking day it is at this point. I'm so out of it. So, back in February, our dear friend, Damien, was here in town and staying with us, and he had one simple request. The entire time we were here. Yeah, do you want to see Disneyland? No. Do you want to go to the beach? No. Do you want to go to Fashion Island? No. Do you want to, go to LA? No. He had one simple request. And that request was that he could record a podcast with us if we happened to be, recording during that time. And as a avid listener, he listened to every single episode. He had
to
one
every
request.
Single second.
And we dropped the fucking ball because
there were a lot of other things to do.
There was a lot of things to do that trip, and we ended up not recording with him.
We ended up not recording you and I at all for several weeks.
Yeah, because that week was the first week where it was like, okay, we have company here. We're going to do stuff. And then the week after was something.
I think you guys were gone the next week.
I think we were in LA the next weekend because the following weekend, or 2 weekends later, was your trip to New Orleans for your birthday. And then
there was a weekend there you were at Vegas.
There was a Vegas weekend because Kyle's friends were in town. And then another weekend was Idaho. So there's been lots of very busy weekends the past few weeks. And unfortunately, we've only recently started recording again. I guess I'm dancing around it. Damien's dead. And I don't know how to... it's the first time I think I said it out loud. Second? Oh, yeah, because the other day. Yeah, when I told you. Yeah. And Kyle. So, 2 weeks after Damien left us, I don't even know if it was a full 2 weeks. It might have been. He had a heart attack, which for somebody who is in their early 30s is very unusual. He had multiple clogged arteries. And the past few weeks, he has been in both a heart hospital and at New York Presbyterian, being monitored to see how and if it was possible for him to recover. It's a very dicey issue, and in a lot of ways it was almost like a case study for a lot of the people there because, again, this is someone in his very early 30s having a heart attack that someone would see normally. A doctor or cardiologist would expect somebody twice their age.
60s, yeah.
Yeah, to have something that serious. He had within the past few years, lost some weight, done a little bit more about diet and gotten in shape. And the dog's drinking water in the background, so whatever. That's just how it is around here. But he'd made a lot of big strides in getting healthy and walked, he got his steps in.
That's when he was listening to our podcast. That's when he was walking.
So we are the accompaniment for people who walk. Which it's nice to see that we're at least the number one form of entertainment for people who are doing something else.
Exercise.
Exactly. Exercise. In fact, we might be infuriating enough to at least, power someone's Stairmaster or their deadlifts.
We probably raised his heart rate a little bit while he was doing his cardio.
So you're saying indirectly that we kept him alive.
Yes,
yes,
that's exactly
we did.
What I'm saying.
We did. And so it was a very unusual situation. Now, I have known Damien since 2000, and I was trying to look back the other day to see when. It's hard when you. So I've talked to Damien every single day for at least the past 15 years.
Right.
And maybe the most break was like a week or two at a time. Like I think one time 10 years ago, we went a couple of weeks without talking. Other than that, every single day. Every single day. Rain or shine.
In some form or another.
In some form or another, whether it's a Twitter DM, a text, a Facebook message, an AOL instant message. That's how long we've known each other.
You're reaching here.
I mean, we're to the point where we're practically at like carrier pigeon and teletype.
I was going to say smoke signal or chisel. You can't spit in Moscow.
What's a shit chisel?
No, the chisel and stone.
Oh, yes. The chisel and stone. So we've talked every day. And so the past few weeks has been very challenging because I even, posted on Twitter. I said it's been very hollow and profound to not have that person's voice in your life. And of course, there's been the hope and deep prayers that he would come back. In fact, I've encouraged many people who also were good friends of his to at least write down what you would have, said. I've been leaning on a lot of other people, like Christian, our friend Christian, and I've been like sending him things that I would send Damien. I was like, look, write some stuff down for when he comes back. And unfortunately, we found out a couple days ago that that's not the case. He passed very peacefully. And, it's one of those things that happens when you've been in hospitalization for 7-8 weeks after suffering a major heart attack. It could happen to anybody. And so the first thing that you do is your mind goes through regrets. And there was a couple of regrets that I had. I know on that trip that had the dog not, caused a water leak in the backyard, maybe we would have gone to LA the next day, which I know that he wanted to do. He'd been there before, but we had talked about that. And I regret that we didn't get to record because it would have been a nice thing to have. I know he would have gotten a kick out of it had we done that when he was here. So, I don't know really where to go from here. Damien is a big. I can pretty directly trace Damien to just about everything that's in my life today. So some of my best friends I met through him or because of him. He's the one who encouraged me to get on to social media. He's my first Twitter follower. I was one of his first. Long ago on Facebook when it was just a class project. He was, I think, the first person who I didn't actually know in real life who was on there. In fact, Damien was like my first remote friend because he lived in New York.
Right.
And I didn't get to meet him in person until 2017, I think.
But you felt like you knew him very well. Because you talked to him every day.
A decade. Which is weird.
That's the one of the few benefits of actual the social media is we get to meet people that we normally would never.
Right, and it wasn't it was something where we met around we met before the 2008 election because I at the time when I had just started Bulletproof Diction with a then friend of mine. And it's funny, when Damien was here, we were actually talking about this. We were trying to figure out what the first message was, who reached out to who first, and how that happened. And I was a blogger back when I was in high school.
Right.
And he also had I believe it was something like the Conservatarian or something along those lines. and he had his own blog too. And back then there was, if you go on Drudge Report today, you'll see a list of the websites, columnists that he wants, that he gets information from. So it's Ann Coulter, it's Brett Baer, it's like Huffington Post, things like that. So back in the early days of the internet, especially on the right, you had lists of people who you would say, hey, also go and check out these people. They're very smart. You do something called HT, which was a hat tip to them if you covered a topic that they covered. It was a form of accreditation in a completely new media environment then. Nobody knew how, if you wrote something but this other person wrote it first, how do you do that? And so that network would grow. And one of the biggest people at the time was Michelle Malkin. She had started Hot Air, and she also had one of the first comment systems where instead of it just being a forum, each individual post had comments that were relevant to that post. This is before New York Times had a website where it had an open public comment section or anything else. It was like Huffington Post and then a few people on the right. The late, great Andrew Breitbart, who helped Arianna Huffington build Huffington Post and was involved in Drudge, was a very important figure in doing that. And it connected people because there was no social media. So if you lived in Dubuque, Iowa, and someone else lived in Fort Myers, Florida, you really had no way of both having an opinion at the same time that you could share with each other about something if you didn't otherwise know each other. Right. So news event happens, person in Dubuque and person in Fort Myers can actually have a conversation back and forth about it, and that grew more communities, more ideas, more thoughts. So in that environment is where I first met Damien. And there were predecessors to so many of the existing social media platforms that we have now. One of them that was called Ning. And you've never heard of this. It was such a short-lived thing. This was like a few months. And this was it was kind of like how there was Clubhouse, where people jumped on and chat, and then nobody talks about Clubhouse now. Ning was like that, and it was before Discord and before, you could create a private server and you could share each other's links, boost, because if you got views on, especially with ads on your blog, you actually made money off of that. Bloggers made money. And this was even before the internet was good enough to support things like YouTube and other forms of visual and video media.
Right.
So this was way, way back then.
You're showing your age, sir.
Well, at least it's still on the internet with you. It's on, what you guys...
Gramophone.
What, you had daguerreotypes of each other? Like, Jesus. So, since then, I was in high school then, Damien was in high school then, and, we weren't like on-campus Republicans or anything, but we both were, I would say at the time, very well-read. Damien was by and large one of the most intelligent people I've ever met, and especially had a brain that had unbelievable processing capabilities.
It's like a file cabinet.
It really is. And by the way, I'm mad, and I'm never not going to be mad that that's an extraordinary resource that's not replicable. Like, AI could not replicate the fact that if you talk to him, if he's sitting across the table from you and you say, who's in the 31st district in California? He's like, oh, it's so-and-so. And that district was redistricted in 2008. And before then it had so-and-so there. And so-and-so, was in the primary because and you're like, who know? People who work for politics as a living do not know this. People who live in that district do not know this. But he had this supernatural capability of having every member of Congress, almost every piece of legislation at both the federal and state level, just in his brain. And it was for no reason other than just it was the way that his
morbid
brain processed
curiosity.
It really was. And
I use the word morbid very deliberately.
Yes. So that was extraordinary capability, and I appreciated that. So anyway, you start talking to somebody, and over the course of years, we're both graduating high school, we're both going into college, we're meeting new people. But Damien was always a consistent person there. It's through him I met, one of my best friends, Richard. We were both in a conservative group on Facebook that had gays, straights, and women all together And trust me when I tell you that the women are the one who helped burn that thing down. But we met a lot of friends through that, and a few enemies. And then, going into the next phase of Damien got more politically involved with Feminists for Life. He was the most passionate and eloquent pro-life advocate, I think, that was public in the past decade or two. He had a way of understanding both statistics about abortion and also understanding the difficult decisions and situations that young women go through when they might be contemplating that for women of all backgrounds. It's part of a group called Feminists for Life. And it was very much a first wave feminism approach. He was passionate about women being equal, and yet his favorite joke was women's rights. You can't remember Damien without telling a few jokes. He's also one of the funniest people I've ever met, with one of the most unhinged senses of humor.
It was fascinating, the way that he, how do I put this? It wasn't necessarily jokes. There was no shtick. There was none of that. It was just, without missing a beat, just dropping a one-liner that you're like, who the fuck says or thinks of that? And you're like,
and it would devastate
genius.
you. It would devastate you.
And he had a very good repartee with you. I mean, everyone loved that when they heard you guys go back and forth. And I mean, you and I have that too, but that's half of the podcast here. But You guys had a very specific dynamic that you drew on from obviously years and years and years of high school up through college, knowing each other. That you had a bank of stuff that you could rag each other on.
We had a whole fucking, we had a financial network of stuff that we could access. And I think I remember the first night he was here. Before he sat in his chonies on the couch. That's another story, and I do want to mention that.
God.
It's so funny. He comes to our house, he's sitting here, staying here, and he's sitting there in his briefs on our couch, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? You're on my furniture with your ass out for no reason. Just sitting there drinking sherry and, looking at Twitter on his phone.
And it was February. It's Southern California, so it's not cold, but it's colder than it normally would be.
The joke is this is where I tweet from. That was where he tweeted from. And I know that we terrorized both you and Kyle that first night that he was here because we said, okay, you're here. He never stayed with me before. He's visited before but never stayed. I said, we're going to watch Golden Shower Girls. And it is...
I excused myself into the other room because I was not going to participate with that.
It's a parody of the Golden Girls, written by this comedy writer that goes to Siena de Enema in West Hollywood. And all four of the Golden Girls are trannies. Now, this used to be on Funny or Die. I don't know where to find it. We found it on some obscure site or something like that, on Vimeo or some band, Right. It's treated like contraband now. But it's a parody, and all four of them are
black
trannies.
Market video.
It's literally black market video at this point because of copyright reasons. So, Betty White's estate was absolutely fucking not. You will.
No,
not.
Hers probably had no problem with it. It was probably that bitch Rue McClanahan.
You mean you?
No, shut up.
You will rue the McClanahan that you crossed me. So, it's a parody, but so it overlays over the Golden Girls episodes with the absolute most disgusting, worst jokes and the worst voices you can imagine.
Do not watch it. Do not look.
You have to watch it in honor of Damien because all I'll remember of his voice. There's a whole bank of things I remember, but the one thing I remember the most is him saying, "Fat tranny motherfucker," over Sophia Petrillo. And I'll always remember us this way. That's how I'll remember him saying that. I wish I could have recorded it and made it my ringtone.
And he would have nothing more. He would. That is the one memory he would want you to have.
It really is, which is why I also want to get into another sort of topic here. Obviously this has been very shocking and saddening to many people that we mutually know. And one thing I know that many people have described him as is nice. He was not nice. He was a lot of things, but he was not nice. He may have been kind and polite to you because being a very young sibling with a much older sibling, he functioned as an only child. And we met his mother. You knew he grew up with manners and he grew up in a good home. His parents are wonderful people. He knew his place. But anyone saying that he was nice did not know him as well as you think. He was the meanest, messiest bitch I have ever met. Even more than you. Because you still have Southern propriety. He didn't have that. And
he had Long Island propriety, which is not much.
I don't know what Long Island propriety is. I think it's, it's scratching your crabs with a bucket of crabs on the seashore. I've never been to the Hamptons. I don't know what goes on. But
the Hamptons is not Long Island, but anyway.
The Hamptons is on Long Island. What's wrong with you?
But they don't associate with...
Well, blacks? Yeah, they don't.
Oh my God.
That's
not what I was going to say.
That would be... And I have to say, and just a side note, one of the things that he was very proud of is that his family's church, so his dad, Father Jeminder, and their Anglo-Catholic church was really a very...
It's Episcopalian.
It's not Episcopalian. Don't insult him like that. He said it's Anglo-Catholic. He was very specific about this.
That is what Episcopalian... Okay, anyway.
Go ahead.
How
dare you piss on his memory by saying Episcopalian? He would never... And by the way, this is somebody who had nothing but pure contempt for Unitarians and other pedophiles. Like, he was resolute in hating Jesuits, all these other horrible pretenders. So, there's that. But, well, we can, I'll pause it because Kyle's home.
It's what Damien would want me to do.
Damien would not... Actually, yes. He probably would want you to fill a glass with rubbing alcohol and just drown me in it.
Yeah.
So, there's that. But no, I was talking about Episcopalians and Unitarians. Unitarians not being real.
Well, no, they're not.
Well, he went to your church, which is a Catholic church, and he was like, they're not as traditional as I would have liked. But
it's Southern California,
right?
They're as traditional in this area as you're going to get. I hate to tell you.
There's one in Whittier, and maybe we should all go. But there's one, I don't know how Latin it is. I don't know what goes on there. But it is like it's more traditional than the current Pope. I'll tell you.
It's not hard to do.
Well, I know, exactly. I am. But, But one of the things he was very proud of with his dad's parish was that for a lot of the immigrants that came to the area, and I don't mean refugees or illegal immigrants or anything like that. I mean, people who actually made the choice to come and did it the proper way, was that their church was a very welcoming place, and they had an unbelievably diverse congregation. There were people from the West Indies.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I think he told me they have a pretty nice Polish population.
Polacks. They have a really,
Polish are pretty... Well, a lot of them are Catholic, but maybe
right.
Leaning towards Episcopalian.
You can't... But no, he was very proud of the fact that their parish was so diverse, and that he said we're basically colonizing the native population. That was his words, not mine. But I have to also mention that when I think about him, because it was something that he was very proud of that, and he was very involved in the church community.
He was
there.
The cantor, the singer, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big deal. That's
it's a huge task, yeah.
Which it's all the more tragic that they're doing Sunday service tomorrow, and it's going to be his wake, and then on Monday they're doing his service. As a parent in charge of a congregation, having to do that for your child is nothing anybody should have to do. That's very hard. I talked to his mom during Easter, and she said, I said, mention something about church. She said, well, I haven't been back in the past few weeks. She said, I'm a little mad at God right now. She said, I'll go back. She said, maybe you can talk to him on my behalf. I'll go back when I'm ready. And I think it's, in any faith tradition, But even in Christianity, it's okay to be angry with something that happened that seems unjust and random and very out of left field. And I know I am. And I know that it in some ways makes me lean closer to my faith, and in other ways the hard part for me, as someone who I feel like has lost, both my parents and now someone who's known me longer than anybody else who was currently living, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, what now? What else? What else can happen? Who else could I lose? And why? To what end? It sounds very selfish, when I say it out loud, but you do lose parts of you when you lose those people. And I guess my job going forward my one job is to make sure that there's never nothing left. I want to make sure that Damien is remembered appropriately in what I do going forward. And I know that there's many people whose lives that he touched, some physically, but I know that they're now, if they were acquaintances, they're now my friends. If they're my friends, they're now my close friends, because he was a person who, especially in the past few years when everything and all this nonsense was going on, he made an effort to check in with people and to spend time with people.
He brought people together.
Help. Yes. In a way that most people are very uncomfortable doing.
Now, I'd like to take a second to tell some of the stuff that I remember and know very fondly.
Before I just start bawling.
And then I want to respond to some of the stuff that you said. So first of all, I've only had the pleasure of knowing Damien for 2.5, pushing 3 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Almost 3, yeah. Come July or so, it would be 3. He was the only person. I'm just thinking. Yes, he was the only person to brave the trek to come to Albuquerque and stay with me and visit me.
Yes. Even I didn't. I had the chance to, and I feel really bad. But he did. He made the effort.
Yes. And it is amazing. I lived in that godforsaken city for 7.5 years at the time.
In that old woman's goddamn house.
Yeah. Well, not the whole time, but yes. But he was able to find things in that city that I didn't know existed. And I'd been there for 7.5 years. That was the type of person he was. He was adventurous and he would find wonderful things in gyms that just a really quick anecdote. I took him to one of the bars that I frequented. He started talking to some random people, which he is wont to do, especially after a few drinks.
Yeah.
I don't do that because I'm very introverted. I don't talk to randos. But he's much friendlier than I was, and he would start talking to people. And so he started talking to these people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're leaving here and we're going to this other place. Come with us." And so we were like, "Okay." We went with them. We literally walked down an alleyway. They knocked twice in a secretive knock on this door in the side of a wall that I had no idea was actually a door. And we walked into this place that was the coolest looking bar in the world. And I'm like, how the fuck do you know that this is here?
You're like, I've lived here for years. How did you know?
Well, so he met the people who knew that this place... I would never have... it's because of him that I had this interesting evening in Albuquerque that I never would have had otherwise. And I was just like in awe of this. It was almost like a sign to me, like you need to just start talking to random people. Like you need to be more like
Need
Damien.
to open up.
Need to be more like Damien. That's the only way I need to be more like Damien.
Well,
I'm kidding.
But no, the same thing in New York when we were there and we go to and he's like, it's like I know a place. Oh, it's over here. It's by Penn Station. And we're just walking through the fucking city with Mikkel and Mike W. in tow. And we just end up in this bar, and it's random. And Damien's just talking. He's like the mayor. Like, he's just talking to people, and they're asking their stories and everything like this, and complimenting people on their album. And I'm just like, even I'm just sitting there, like, in awe of someone working a room like that.
But I will never forget that very, very interesting evening, because I thought it was going to be a flop. Because we went to this bar, it was dead. He ended up talking to just these two random people, and it ended in what was a interesting, fun kind of evening. And then the next evening, I brought him to this other place where he got a cocktail with the portrait of Bob Ross on the top, and it was lovely and cool little cocktail bar. But he loved it. He loved Bob. He loved drinking Bob Ross's face. He made a spectacle out of it.
Oh, look, I'm saying I'm Bob Ross.
He probably did say something like
Probably.
that. But no, in response to a few of the things that you said, because I am very... I've had experiences in my life that have taught me that I have to believe this and I have to think this way. It sounds cliche, it sounds trite. Everything does happen for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And...
what's the reason?
That's the problem, is we can't see the reason, and sometimes it's going to take years, sometimes it might take a decade before you realize, you know what? I see it now.
I know how hard it would have been for later in Damien's life to lose his parents. And now he's spared having to experience that. That's tough. Because, he lived with them, he took care of them, they took care of him. Like, that's a big deal. I was thinking about this the other day, and, while he was here, I bullied him about not having a driver's license, and he didn't have to do this to get out of it. Like, my God. He talked about going to Houston, maybe moving there. He talked about spending more time in the UK. There was a lot of traveling and a lot of things he wanted to do. I think that now we'll have to experience them and, in our hearts, bring him with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that, because that was the other thing that I forgot I was going to mention. I mentioned, and I have no problem sharing this, and I'm sure the person I'm talking about does. I won't name names. But someone mentioned in our friend group that, he was missing him, especially today, and he didn't want to go have fun and felt like kind of guilty for doing so.
Right.
And it's like, but you have to realize that there used to be, and I thoroughly believe this, and I know it sounds hippy dippy and it's not like me, but this is truly how I feel and how I believe. So you're getting the real deal here. I'm no filter.
The real deal, Holyfield?
When you're human, when you're here, there are physical barriers. I can't always be somewhere.
Right.
There's no longer a barrier like that. He was there watching a concert. He was there toasting with us to champagne yesterday. There's no more having to get on a plane. He's just always there. And so...
and he would say in this almost Andy Dick affect, and now I'm in all of you.
Exactly.
But he is.
Right.
And I feel violated.
No, but it is true, and you should have some kind of piece of that, because when you experience something, he will experience it with you.
That's true.
He's probably experiencing it now with someone else.
He is laughing our fucking his ass off as we're sitting here doing this podcast. And he's happy that, he gets to be a part of this one, I guess.
And he's drinking better sherry than the shit we bought him.
So before he came here, and this is another good anecdote.
We'll close out with this because
we
want to take the shot of sherry.
Well, before he came here, this is something I always like to do, and I think it's, the hostess in me. But if someone's coming to your house and they're staying for a couple days, you usually go to, what's one thing that they like that I can have there for them to enjoy? Alcohol's easiest, obviously. I'm like Lisa Rinna showing up to a party. I'll have a bottle of alcohol and that same fucking wine tote that she takes home with her at the end. I know she takes that same one home with her at the end of the night. She puts it in her purse and she repackages the next time because I saw it. And so...
Did you just call her cheap?
Yes, and she'd be proud of that. Anyone who says actor/hustler in their Instagram bio is cheap. But... the problem with Damien, this is the biggest problem he ever had. He never liked a specific hard alcohol.
Right.
He wasn't a vodka person, a gin person, a tequila person, or a rum person.
It was whatever he felt at the moment.
Yes. So he could be like, we're out, and he's ordering an old fashioned. Or he might have a glass of wine or this and that.
And he mixed.
He mixed terribly. He mixed races. He mixed alcohols. He mixed metaphors.
Sexuality.
He mixed sexuality.
Gender.
Genders. He mixed it all. And so...
he was Sir Mix-a-Lot.
And so, before he comes, I know that there's one thing that he drinks that no one under the age of 85 drinks. Sherry.
Other than Niles Crane.
Other than Niles Crane and Damien's
doesn't actually exist.
Exactly, and Damien's own father. Nobody drinks sherry. And even his mother was, perplexed, but she's like, I don't drink sherry. I don't understand. He's a wacko. He drinks sherry. And so, he's like an old British woman... drinking...
Dame Maggie Smith.
Literally drinking sherry, judging people, which he's doing right now. And so I'm like, well, why the fuck am I going to... So we go to Total Wine, as always.
And we spent at least 30 minutes looking for some kind of sherry.
We looked...
is this right? Is this right?
Total Wine has about... And that's a small Total Wine. They have about...
18 varieties.
They have about 18 aisles of different kinds of wine. And so you're going through... No, we were looking... And then we finally get to the sherry cordial section. And we're looking, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck he wants. There's sweet ones,
right.
There's dry ones, there's flavored ones, there's cooking ones.
Amontillado.
And so we end up getting a bottle of Don Beguino Jerez Sherry Amontillado, which he would love because it's Hispanic. And we bought it thinking, I was like, I don't know what this tastes like. Very rarely do I buy an alcohol for someone where it's I haven't tried it first. Right. I don't know what this tastes like.
And it was middle of the road. It wasn't the cheap shit. It wasn't the, $100,000 shit.
Right, because there was some very expensive stuff, and I'm like, I don't know if this is good. I don't know if this is right. I don't know how this works. It's not like where you go and get tequila.
We were both so afraid.
We were both really afraid. And we brought it home.
Because he would throw the bottle at us if
he
had bought
He would have one sip and be like, what the fuck is this? And then, what do you do? And what's he going to do? Walk down to the bar at the end of the street and try to order sherry? They'll laugh at you. They don't have sherry. No place has sherry. But we've got a bottle of sherry. And would you say it's on the drier side?
It's right in the middle. It's not it's not something you'd want to cook with.
Yeah.
But it's not so sweet that
it's not something you want to cook with or drink. It's just
No. It's drinkable because it's not so sweet that you're cotton mouth immediately after you drink it, or it's hurting your teeth. But it's not dry enough to cook with, because when you cook with it has to be dry.
Right.
Oh, well, unless you're making a sherry cake. This would be perfect for a sherry cake.
Wasn't Sherry Cake on season 14 of RuPaul's Drag Race?
Yes, probably.
I think so. She got canceled. So, we have a bottle of sherry here, and we've been taking shots of this in memory of Damien. It tastes horrible. I'm so pissed. I'm so pissed at him that he left this musty-ass grape wine sitting on my bar, and that's the only physical memory in this house I have of him. I mean, I haven't swabbed the toilet seats yet, but still. This is...
I've bleached those since then, so... Yeah.
Thank God. So, shall we? Alright. This one's to Damien. Oh, God damn it. Ugh. tastes like a Spanish woman's taint.
Tastes lovely.
Ugh.
Anyway,
Shall we?
I will not use my normal tagline because that seems inappropriate. So, Damien,
And I'm gonna
rest in peace and don't go fuck yourself.
No, he should go fuck himself. He left us. He left us here. He left us here in this hellscape, and he's over there with his wings, and we're stuck. So you know what?
His wings and his good cherry.
Oh God, Damien, take care of my parents, and I'll take care of yours.
And we'll see you later.
Go fuck yourself.